This is just going to be a fun night. I'm going to ramble a little bit, talk about different presidential illnesses, how it affected history, and then just kind of have some fun with it. So I'm going to start off with George Washington, a famous picture. This was painted in 1851. Can people hear me in the back okay? Okay. The original hangs in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. I've never seen it, but that's where it is. Crossing the Delaware, Christmas night, 1776, going to Trenton for the Battle of Trenton. And mostly what was there that they fought were the German Hessians that were actually mercenaries that the British had employed to fight our forces. Fortunately, they had a battle they won, and one of the few battles that we won during the Revolutionary War, and at least kind of turned the tide for a short period of time. Washington was generally a very healthy person. You know, he was a frontiersman, a surveyor, went out and surveyed land, bought it as he surveyed it. When he married Martha Washington, she was widowed. He became the largest landowner in America. So when he fought the Revolutionary War, he was fighting for his own land. When he was a late teen, his older brother and he traveled down to the Caribbean, and he acquired smallpox there. And he was pocked when you read stories about him. Unfortunately, it was a mild case. Smallpox, statistically, is still the most deadly disease that ever affected mankind. It's been eradicated from the planet since the late 1970s, but in human history, nothing has killed more people than smallpox. So he was pocked, and later, during the Revolutionary War, as some of you may know, there were outbreaks of smallpox really throughout the world, and several during the Revolutionary War. When the British left Boston, they left blankets that were contaminated with smallpox in the community in hopes that our forces would pick up smallpox. It was the first type of germ warfare that was thought of almost 300 years ago. Fortunately, Washington already having smallpox, it's like chickenpox, you get lifelong immunity, so he was protected from the disease that still killed many during that time. The other thing famous about Washington's health, of course, is his teeth, or lack of, which is a common thing then, and went through all type of different devices, and they're actually at Mount Vernon, you can actually see his teeth. I've had the pleasure of being to Mount Vernon and touring his home. One thing that was kind of interesting about his home, I don't know if you have been there, but when you walk out the back of his house, probably 100 yards down the hill is the Potomac River. And it's pretty wide there. It's about as wide as the Wabash would be in Terre Haute. And I asked the tour guide, I said, the British control the seas, did they ever have a gunboat there? And he said, yes, they sailed right down there. I said, well, why didn't they blow up his house? They just didn't do that. It was not chivalrous to do that. Plus, Martha was there a fair amount of the time, and that just was not done. So his house remained. It could have been blown up easily. But otherwise, he was generally healthy. When he died, what had happened, he was 67 years old, had been out riding on his farm, cold, wet, sort of developed a cold, a sore throat, probably developed some fever, went out and rode again the next day, and then got deathly ill. The physicians were called, and he had what people at that time called quinsy, which may have been today what we call epiglottitis. The epiglottis is a little appendage that sits over our trachea and helps block our airway if we're going to choke on something. Anyway, it looked like that's probably what he had today. And so the three of the best doctors in the country, what do you think they did for him? They bled him, and they bled him a lot. They think that maybe they actually bled out half of his blood supply, and that's probably what helped kill him. They took blistered beetle blisters, blistering beetles, ground them up, blew them in the back of his throat to irritate his throat even more. Castor oil, of course, different type of enemas, and eventually, of course, he died. Washington had a fear of being buried alive, and in his will, he wrote that he's going to have to be kept above ground for at least 3 days before he was buried. There was a Frenchman, a physician, was quoted saying back then, nearly all men die of their remedies, not of their afflictions. And I think Washington kind of fit that also. One thing about Thomas Jefferson was also a very healthy person. He and John Adams were two of the three longest living signers of the Declaration of Independence. A horseman, a strong person, good size. He was 6 foot, maybe 6'1", about 180 pounds. But one thing that he was afflicted with was a very peculiar type of migraine. And when you read stories about Jefferson, it's quoted a lot that he would go to bed. He would like disappear. And what's kind of amazing is someone like Jefferson, you can almost tell where he was every day of his life. Governor of Virginia, Secretary of State, Vice President, President, Ambassador to France. So he kept records of everything. So his life is very well documented, almost like, could somebody tell 100 years from now, tell where we were tonight? But somebody knew where Jefferson was almost every day. And he describes paroxysms of headaches. He writes to a fellow that he says here in 1790, I've been prevented from acknowledging your letter of yours from April 30th due to an attack of my periodic headaches, which came to me on the 1st of May and have not yet quitted me. The first week they were violent, the next week they were moderate, and then they began to clear. Most likely, and actually a physician at Cleveland Clinic wrote a story about Jefferson's headaches. He most likely had what people call cluster migraine. It's felt to be probably the most painful headache that people can have. People have even been known to commit suicide because of it. I've only dealt with one person in my career that had cluster headaches, and they are terrible, but they're migraine, they come in clusters. They may disappear for months or years, and when they come, they're often last for several weeks. Some people felt that he was grieving over his lost wife. As some of you may know, he lost his wife a few months after complications from childbirth. And she told him to never remarry. And he did not. Some of you know, though, that his relationship with Sally Hemings, who was a slave on their farm. I think pretty clearly been documented that relationship did occur. DNA studies and so forth like that he theoretically fathered 5 children with Sally Hemings. What's interesting about Sally Hemings, too, though, is that Thomas Jefferson's father-in-law was Sally Hemings' father. Slave owners often had relationships with their slaves. And the Hemingses, as some of you may know, were the house slaves. They did not work in the field. And so actually, if Jefferson never did remarry, but he had a relationship with actually his wife's half-sister. And not uncommon in those times, if a woman would die, sometimes a man would marry the sister. There weren't a lot of people around to marry. In colonial America, a lot of people to choose from. So he actually married his wife's, or had a relationship with his wife's half-sister. Andrew Jackson was a tough guy. He was a frontiersman. And America, when he was elected president, was taking off. We were pushing the Indians back. We were becoming a very adventurous, aggressive, wild nation at that time. He defeated John Quincy Adams, who had a career primarily as a diplomat, as his father had. He went with his father to England when he went as ambassador to the court of St. James. John Adams was our first ambassador representing the United States at the court of St. James in London. John Quincy Adams went with him. So John Quincy Adams was really an academic, served in Russia and several different countries as an ambassador. But America wasn't looking for an academic at that time. They wanted a Wild West guy. And so Andrew Jackson was elected. Andrew Jackson was involved in 2 duels that we know of. The first one, a man apparently insulted his wife. He killed that man, but he shot him in the chest. And the bullet never left. It remained in his chest his entire life. And he would have paroxysms through his entire life of coughing up bloody sputum at different times. I'm sure it was kind of interesting, but the bullet never left. He got in a second duel and was shot in the arm. I don't know what happened to the other man. I never could find out. And the bullet remained in his arm for over 20 years. And finally, when he was in the White House, it caused so much pain that they removed it. Of course, there were no anesthetics and took the bullet out of his arm. So, but he carried that bullet his whole life, but somehow lived to be 78 years old. A nice place to visit, if you ever have, is his home, the Hermitage in Nashville. It's kind of interesting to see. But he was kind of a tough guy and survived with a bullet in his chest his entire life. William Henry Harrison became our president in 1841, and what happened to William Henry Harrison was he gave the longest address, inaugural address in presidential history. It took almost 2 hours, and he wore no hat and no top coat, and he got pneumonia from that event. He died after a month in the presidency. He never really had a chance. He was sick the entire month and died. So I've learned about politics. Keep the speech short, okay? This is a picture of Zachary Taylor. He was the president in the 1840s and had only been in office for a few months. On the 4th of July celebration in Washington, he ate a large bowl of cherries. And within 4 days, he was dead. And it was determined that he died from cholera. Most likely from cherries that were worse in the Potomac. We forget about public health now, but water was not clean then. And so the Potomac was a dirty river. And actually, 12 years later, Todd Lincoln died from typhoid, probably from contaminated water, also from the Potomac. Cholera is a terrible disease. It's still around the world today. There's outbreaks periodically in the third world, underdeveloped world. But cholera, you pretty much slough off the lining of your colon, and you generally die if you don't get significant IV fluids even today. Some of you may recall when they had the terrible earthquakes in Haiti about 5 years ago, what killed over 1,000 people was cholera. It was actually brought in from people from Ethiopia coming in as aid workers and transmitted cholera into Haiti and gave them that. So don't eat the cherries, or at least boil them before you eat them. James Garfield, he was a president in 1880. He was shot at the train station in Washington, D.C., getting ready to go on a trip, by a disgruntled government worker who was looking for a job. He was shot in the back. He was actually shot twice, once in the arm, once in the back, and of course collapsed there. The bullet hit him in the flank, and multiple doctors came to see him, and what do you think they all did? Stuck their finger in his wound, time after time. Louis Pasteur had already come up with the ideas of the germ theory in the 1860s, 1870s. Lister, who know the word Listerine, he had also developed the ideas about antiseptic techniques and had carbolic acid, is what they sprayed over people and washed their hands with. But it hadn't quite gotten to the new world yet. And they stuck different probes into his back trying to find this bullet, and they never did. They felt it was lodged in his liver and he was going to die from it. But actually he stayed ill for almost 11 weeks, in and out of sepsis, in and out of a coma. Washington, D.C. was a swamp city, actually, very hot in the summertime, brutal. And they actually moved him out in the countryside so he could get some better air, and actually brought blocks of ice into his room to try to cool the room for him as he went through sweats and so forth. But after 11 weeks of sepsis, he died. And the autopsy showed that the bullet was lodged in the muscle of his back. It never got to his liver. He could have survived that wound without physician input. And actually, when the man went to trial for shooting the president, his attorney said, he shot the president, I agree with that, but he did not kill him. His physicians killed him. But it didn't work very well. He got hung about 3 weeks later anyway. But they tried. Grover Cleveland, like most people at that time, smoked cigars heavily, and most people drank quite a bit. We think we drink a lot today, but these people drank a lot. George Washington drank a lot too. I'll just go back a little bit. When Washington accepted his command, what was interesting about that, when they were meeting to draw up the Declaration of Independence and what they're going to do if they rebel from Great Britain, who's going to lead us? Who would lead our forces? Was, some of you may know, George Washington actually put on his old Indian Wars uniform and sat in the back row. So you're looking around like, okay, we got to have a general. Who are we going to get? What about the big guy back there? He's in his uniform. They knew who he was. He had served in the House of Burgesses in Virginia. I mean, he was well known. But he just sat in the back row with his uniform on. They literally just said, you want to take this job? He said, okay. But what Washington asked for was no salary, but he wanted expenses. And he kept track of them over those 8 years of the Revolutionary War. And the biggest thing they spent money on was Madeira wine. They only had about 4 bottles a year, so they drank a lot. And people would come and see him, and water wasn't safe. So they drank wine. And Washington eventually got paid back, but it took quite a while. But his expenses were pretty significant. Anyway, he developed a lesion inside of his mouth. And it was very suspicious looking. The doctors at Johns Hopkins looked at it, thought it was a malignancy. They wanted to keep it all quiet, so a group of 5 doctors took him on a boat, and they sailed off New York's harbor, and they operated on his mouth on a boat, so nobody knew anything about it. The press wasn't like it was today, and removed over a 2-inch tumor in the roof of his mouth. They later were able to put a prosthesis, rubber prosthesis, very rudimentary, but to cover that hole inside, and it cured him, and he lived on to be 78 years old before he ever died. But he got operated out in a boat in the middle of nowhere with nobody watching. That couldn't happen today. Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson was an academic. He was the president of Princeton University, very bookish, of course. And Woodrow Wilson, after the terrible battles of World War I, where really Germany, England, and France literally lost a whole generation of young men, Wilson went to Europe during the Paris peace talks. This is in early 1919. The war was over, as you know, November 11th, 1918. So he went there to try to actually developing the ideas of what we hope to be would be the League of Nations, which would hopefully be the precursor to the United Nations. So he went to Europe, and what was going on at that time in 1918 was the Great Influenza, the Great Flu of 1918, which they estimate killed over 40 million people worldwide. Most people think more than died in all the battles of World War I died of the Great Influenza. He traveled to Paris with some of his aides, and while they were there, his most trusted aide, a young man, 26 years old, developed a fever and died. Wilson develops the fever. He develops the Great Influenza. He was trying to meet with, at these peace talks, to try to get England and France to say, we've lost a generation of young men, tried to appease them, let's try to just move on and get past all this. But they didn't want to do that. And so that's what he was fighting for. When he got the Great Influenza, cables were going back to Washington. His wife was there. We had a transatlantic cable then. So 103 fever, he's unresponsive. They really thought he was going to die, but he survived. However, his participation in peace talks pretty much dropped to nothing. And so as those continued on, he felt as a failure when he came back to the U.S. The idea of the League of Nations failed in Congress, and he felt broken about that. What happened after that, England and France decided to punish Germany and took some of the Rhineland, some of the most fertile land because of that, and drove Germany into deep despair, deep poverty. You have to remember, after World War II, we did something just the opposite. With the Marshall Plan, we supported Germany and Japan and built them back up. This was just the opposite. They took their land and drove Germany into deep poverty. Out of that deep poverty rose Adolf Hitler. So some people say, if he would not have got the Great Influenza, and he could have continued into peace talks, and it could have been done a different way, and Germany may not have suffered so much, would World War II even have happened? Interesting thought. When he came back home, the Great Influenza was a terrible flu, and he developed a stroke that probably was related to the flu. Some people developed encephalitis from that virus, and about 6 months later he developed a debilitating stroke. He was completely paralyzed on the left side while he was president. For almost a year, nobody met with him except for his wife and his doctor. And eventually, with therapy, he was able to walk. As you can see, he's still president here with the help of an aide, paralyzed on the left side. And so he really didn't hardly conduct any business at all. He, after his presidency, he stayed in D.C. I went and visited his home. I don't know if you've ever been to his home. It's not. And kind of toured it. And I'll talk about it a little bit later, but what was interesting when the day I was there was his Nobel Peace Prize was there. And you could see it. Anybody ever see a Nobel Prize? I've seen two of them. We'll talk about it a little bit. But they're pretty big. Thick, gold. Of course, there's Swedish writing on them. And Nobel's on the front of it and so forth. But got to see his Nobel Prize. The other thing that was interesting about the Great Influenza of 1918, it was what's called a novel virus. That meant when that virus came, it had never been seen on the planet before. And so we had no immunity to it. Now, older people who may have had other viruses had some marginal immunity, but the Great Influenza really killed young people. And you would be dead in one day. And what the theory is that when you breathe in that virus, if you were young and strong, your immune system reacted so strongly the term we use today is what's called a cytokine storm. Cytokine is a name for different parts of our immune system, white blood cells and different things. So it's almost like a storm took off. When you breathe that virus in, your immune system got so turned on, you attacked your own lungs. And you were dead. And so you were dead within a day. And who did it hit? Our young soldiers. So as World War I was gearing up, and we were totally unprepared for World War I, we packed men into army camps, we packed them onto trains, we packed them onto ships to go to France. They died. And they were dying on the ships going over to France. And they were so desperate for troops, they kept sending them. And finally, parents were able to get Congress to change that and said, it's terrible enough to lose a boy in combat, we're not going to lose him to disease. And they stopped the ship treatments. And so they're quarantining soldiers on the East Coast to make sure everybody was well before they loaded up the troop ships to ship them on. So the same thing could happen again if we were having a novel virus here we've never seen before. It'll go after our immune system. Franklin Roosevelt. Many people, Franklin Roosevelt was an aristocrat, as were the Roosevelts. Teddy was in their family. And they always had money. They had servants and so forth like that. He was the Undersecretary of the Navy in 1939 when they were vacationing on Campanello Island. There was also a large group of Boy Scouts camping there too. I'm not for sure what happened, but polio was transmitted by feces, by contaminated sewage water. That's how it was contaminated. He apparently drank it from a well while they were out camping and so forth like that. And they think that's where he may have picked up the polio. He was fine, went to bed, woke up the next morning, took one step, fell on the floor, never walked again. So he's 39 years old. The question is whether he's even going to survive it. He did, of course. And some people think that, Roosevelt's affliction is what made him understand the struggles that America was having. When he ran for president, it was in the depths of the Depression. Well, in his life, he never worried about anything like that. Now he's suffering just to stay alive. He struggled with every movement that he has. And some people say that struggle that he now felt, he was able to relate to people, and they understood his struggle also. And some people say if he would have been a wealthy aristocrat, he would not have related to people during the Depression and would not have been elected president. As you can see in this picture, his upper body is strong, and many people did not know he had polio. You often see pictures like this with one of his sons, and he's even like he's hiding his cane. He had braces, very heavy, several pounds of braces locked on. He had no movement in his lower legs. Would lock those braces down, and then would always have a son on his arm or someone on his arm, and he could take a few steps, but they were exhausted just for him to have to do that. But that's how most people saw him. When he was sitting, because he had to use his arms so much, his upper body was powerful, big arms and strong. So many people did not know he had polio. The Roosevelt Memorial that's on in Washington, D.C., that's probably been there 15 years or so. They do have one monument of him in a wheelchair with his dog in his lap. Do you remember his dog's name? Follow, okay. All the presidents had dogs, and so forth like that. He also suffered from very high blood pressure, sometimes over 200s. There was no medicine for blood pressure at that time. He was a smoker. You've seen him with his cigarette holder and so forth like that. So it was very high blood pressure. He was at Warm Springs, Arkansas, when he cried out, "I have a terrible pain in my head," and he collapsed and never woke up and died shortly afterwards. Most likely he had ruptured an aneurysm and died suddenly. When they called Eleanor, she was in D.C., and told him what had happened. Do you know what her first question was? Was she with him? And she was. He had had a companion for many years, Lucy. So she was with him at that time, but they got her out of there. And so, well, she was with him the day that he died and so forth. President Eisenhower, interesting person, grew up very poor, dirt floor house in Abilene, Kansas. Did not have any money. He really had, but he was really a good athlete and a pretty smart young man, and was quite a football player. And at that time, you could play high school football until you turned 19. He graduated early and actually played high school football when he was no longer in high school. He just played it. And his best friend's father was a doctor, and Eisenhower wasn't very worldly, or his family didn't have much. And his doctor, his friend's dad told him, if you want to play football, you know where you need to go to school. You need to go to Army. He really had no interest in the military. He wanted to play football. So that's how he ended up in West Point. When he applied the first time, he was not accepted. Took some classes and was accepted the second year. So that it's sort of interesting that football is what brought Eisenhower to the military. The rest is sort of history. One thing that Eisenhower did after World War I, as some of you may know, when you look at the interstate system, they call it the Eisenhower interstate system and so forth. How that developed was one of his tasks, along with other officers in the 1920s, was what if we have a war on both borders? How will we move troops and equipment across this country? And so literally he and a group of soldiers spent a year camping across America and mapping out the idea of an interstate system. And what they saw that was part of their idea for that was the German Autobahn. That existed back then. And so they knew it was possible to have a high-speed paved road with no stop signs, and everybody could just fly like it is today. We're all going to take a little trip on the Autobahn sometime. But anyway, that's how the interstate system developed. It was really an idea, how do we move troops one coast to the other and equipment without anything stopping us? And that was really the nidus for the interstate system. That's what he developed later. Eisenhower had a bad heart. He had multiple heart attacks. They say that he smoked 4 packs of cigarettes a day during World War II. Probably so. He had some stress. All the guys smoked then. As you know, they gave you cigarettes when you joined up. You got lucky strikes when you joined the military, and they encouraged you to smoke it. Theoretically, kept you awake on guard duty, was one of the things that they said, and it probably did. I know my dad smoked during World War II, but they couldn't smoke in the submarine when they went down, but when they went up, they did. This is 1956. Eisenhower had his first major heart attack, and they hospitalized him at Fitzsimmons Veterans Hospital in Denver, and he stayed 8 weeks in the hospital. Now, let me tell you what happens today in our healthcare system and our EMS system. If you have chest pain in Marshall, Illinois right now, we call EMS. Our paramedics will come to your house. They'll give you IV fluids. They'll give you morphine if you need it for pain, oxygen, and they're going to call a STEMI alert. That's an ST elevation, basically a heart attack. They're going to call a heart attack alert to the hospital. They're going to transmit your EKG before they ever get there. If they look at that and it shows a heart attack, they're calling the cath lab. The cardiologist is coming. 8 or 9 people are coming from their homes as you're heading over to Terre Haute. When you hit the door of the ER, you're passing right into the catheterization line. You're getting a heart cath and a balloon to open up that vessel. And right now, the balloon time is less than 60 minutes. So actually, Union Hospital right now with our EMS is number 1 in the state on how quickly you get your heart attack treatment. You go back to the cath lab, you get your a stent placed, balloon open up an artery, and you often go home the next day, or maybe 2 days. He stayed 7 weeks. There was nothing to offer people. A little bit of morphine, maybe some nitroglycerin, they gave you some heparin, but he stayed 7 weeks in the hospital. Eisenhower had several more heart attacks during his time, including several bouts of colitis. He had 2 colon surgeries during his time, and there was concern at this time because a lot of people didn't like Richard Nixon. And people thought, if Eisenhower dies, Nixon's going to be our president. So there was a real debate in the Republican convention, and actually, as I recall, Eisenhower did not ask for Nixon. He did not nominate him to continue. He let the convention decide. He wasn't a great fan of his either, apparently. But he let the convention decide to pick Nixon again, and the rest is history that he was able to complete his term. And he lived to be 78 years old. You might remember at JFK's funeral, he was there. So even with all that, he had a long life. Okay, JFK and Jackie. Okay, President Kennedy had a difficult life. Let me Let me read something that Bobby Kennedy wrote. At least one half of the days that he spent on this earth were days of intense physical pain. He had scarlet fever when he was very young, serious back trouble when he was older. In between, he had almost every other conceivable ailment. When we were growing up together, we used to laugh about the great risk a mosquito took in biting Jack Kennedy. With some of his blood, the mosquito was almost sure to die. We'll talk about two separate things. Of course, what's famous is a lot about his back pain. And still a little bit curious about what exactly was the issue. When he went to Harvard, a physician examined him and said that he had a weak back. And I don't know what that exactly means. There was some question whether he got hurt in some youth football, but there's no exact documentation when he had his first serious back injury. But we have some young people, I've dealt with a couple who have something called spondylolisthesis. They're born with their spine kind of shifted forward. We've had a couple young men over the years here in town that we did not allow them to play football. Their spine was somewhat unstable. So we may have had something like that. Of course, PT 109, in 1943, as you know, well, let me back up a little bit. President Kennedy's back was bad enough that when he tried to get into the Navy, he was not accepted. His older brother Joe had already been in the Navy, and as some of you know, his oldest brother Joe died. They had developed what would almost be thought today almost like a cruise missile. They had the idea of loading a plane up with all kinds of explosives, flying it over the English Channel into Germany. The pilot would parachute out, and the plane would go on in and do the demolition, almost like a cruise missile. So he volunteered for that mission. His plane blew up over the English Channel, and he died. So the oldest brother died during World War II. So Jack wanted to serve too, but physically they wouldn't take him. His father pulled some strings. His father had a lot of strings. They tell one story about President Kennedy about campaigning somewhere, and he jumps out of the car, and there's like one person walking down the street, shakes her hand, and gets back in the car and says, "What did you shake one person's hand for?" And he said, "I don't want my dad to have to pay for any more votes than he has to." So anyway, his dad pulled some strings, and he got accepted into Naval Intelligence. And it was and he was stationed in Virginia, so we were seeing some more top secret type things coming through. Of course, he started secretly dating a lady at that time who actually was German and who actually been in the presence of Hitler and Goering before. So now you got the son of the past ambassador to Great Britain having an affair with a German lady. He's on Naval Intelligence, and she knows Hitler and Goering. Who do you think was listening in? J. Edgar Hoover. Hoover would take their little flares together in some hotel, and eventually had to break it off, and she got sent back to Germany. But Hoover was watching people even way back then. Then, of course, as the war went on, we needed more soldiers, and the requirements dropped a little bit. So he got an assignment, as you all know, about PT 109, assignment in the South Pacific, and in the Solomon Islands. They were in the middle of the night. Their boat was hit by a Japanese cruiser. 2 men died. It was for those who really read the story, he was really a hero. They swam to a deserted island. For 3 nights in a row, he swam out in the middle of the ocean with a lantern, trying to wave a ship down, not knowing it was our ship or one of theirs. And as some of you know, they were eventually picked up by some natives, and eventually, of course, came back. But it was 7 really difficult days, and he was lucky to survive it, and probably re-injured his back during that. And not long after that, after he came back to the U.S., he was discharged in 1944. He had back surgery in 1945. It was rudimentary surgery at that time. It didn't really change things very much. He had it done in Boston. He then had a second back surgery. This is where this picture is, when he was a U.S. Senator in 1955. And I'll get into this a little bit more about his Addison's disease, but his back really never healed. When he left the hospital, they said he had a hole in his back the size of your fist. And It was during this time of recuperation that he wrote the book, Profiles in Courage. Profiles in Courage, which he got the Pulitzer Prize for, and some people thought he got the Pulitzer Prize because his dad bought a whole lot of those books. And I actually, if you look at our autographs out here, that's actually one of those books autographed by him in our display case. But whether his dad bought, I'm sure he did buy all of them. But the story is about the United States senators in history who showed some type of courage, went against their political party, whatever, and showed conviction. And there was even some debate if he actually wrote it himself. There was some question whether his future aide and speechwriter Ted Sorensen wrote a lot of this. Ted Sorensen, theoretically, who came up with the idea, that's not what your country can do for you, that's what you can do for your country. He was a great speechwriter. But Sorensen didn't write it. Kennedy wrote it all, handwritten and so forth like that. That's what he's doing to recuperate. There's a story about one of his naval buddies by the name of Red Fay. They were buddies since World War II, and Red had come to see him up at in Hyannisport. And Kennedy, penicillin was relatively new. It didn't come in right till the end of the war. And he was giving himself daily shots of penicillin. And so they're sitting there in the bedroom and they're talking, and Kennedy gives himself a shot in the leg and pushes on him. And Red says, "Well, hell, Jack, that doesn't look like that hurts at all." And Kennedy just took that needle and handed him his leg. And Red just came up, standing up off the bed, and said, "Damn it." And he said, "It feels exactly the same to me." Kennedy hated to be seen in a wheelchair or with crutches. You can probably, if you think back, maybe not even hard to remember it. They even had a time where they had a lift on Air Force One, like for luggage, would go up, so he would have to go down the stairs, and he would step onto this lift, and they would lower him down. He didn't like to be grabbed. If you talk to people who knew him, he shook people's hands, but he just didn't want that. No backslapping, nobody, you'd never see him hugging anybody. His back could not take it. He did not really want physical contact. He just couldn't hardly stand it. His rocking chair became famous, dealt with his back pain and so forth. But he suffered that his whole life. And stories get complicated. What he did for pain and so forth like that. There's even stories about Dr. Feelgood. Some of you may have heard these stories. Who actually was kind of a doctor to the stars and the Hollywood stars, and was introduced to President Kennedy by way of Frank Sinatra and the Rat Pack. As you probably know, Peter Lawford was President Kennedy's brother-in-law. He was part of the Rat Pack. And they had a lot of stuff going on back then. So anyway, they introduced him to Dr. Feelgood, and this doctor supposedly was giving Kennedy injections of amphetamines and different kind of pain medicines. And supposedly also, his name was Jacobson. They went to Paris. Jack and Jackie went to Paris. And when they went to Paris, and then they were going on to Vienna to meet with Khrushchev. When they went to Paris, France went crazy. You would have thought it was Elvis Presley and Marilyn Monroe. Jackie Kennedy, 34 years old, looked like she was 25, spoke French fluently, fashion. A million people lined the streets when they came. Not like necessarily today. But at that time, they were, and you may have heard the famous quote that President Kennedy said when he got up to give his address. He said, "I'm the man who escorted President Kennedy to Paris." And that was the truth. She was the rock star and so forth like that. But he went on to Vienna with Khrushchev and didn't go very well. Khrushchev really was hard on him. But supposedly Dr. Jacobson was giving him shots of amphetamine to kind of, build him up, during that trip. The other health problem with President Kennedy was Addison's disease. And you've heard of that term before. I've never had a patient with Addison's disease. It's quite rare. And what it is, your adrenal glands sit on top of your kidneys, and they're involved in a lot of things. They produce cortisol, cortisone. They help control our electrolytes. They're involved in our renal function. And if you had Addison's disease, you died. It was what it was. The treatment for Addison's disease still today is steroids. It's prednisone. Steroids were really developed by German chemists. It's kind of interesting, after World War II, we took the German rocket science, and we ended up on the moon. The Russians took the German chemists. And they have winning a lot of gold medals in the Olympics because they were giving everybody steroids. You know what I mean? So they got the chemists, we got the Russian scientists. We got Wernher von Braun and got the So steroids were developed really by German chemists in the late 1940s, Kennedy was really one of the early people who got steroids for this when he made his diagnosis. He'd gotten jaundice, he'd gotten yellow, was at a hospital in London. Winston Churchill's niece was with him. They really thought he was going to die, and they made that diagnosis. They had just developed steroid pellets, and they actually injected pellets into his thigh to give him steroids. So he was on steroids his entire life. And sometimes that would give him a fat face. Sometimes it would give him a little bronze color, but steroids, long-term use of steroids work against you. Particularly, they thin your bones. And his back was already bad, and so he was wearing a back brace almost his entire life. When he was shot, he had his back brace on. And some people say that first neck wound should have knocked him forward, but his back brace held him up. Whether that contributed to the assassination or not. But the Addison's disease, so all his life he had to take steroids and so forth like that. And during his campaigns, he always had to promote himself as being so healthy, vibrant, playing golf, playing touch football. But in reality, he couldn't do any of that anymore. It was almost he was actually one of our least healthy presidents, even though we did not get that, idea from it. And on his autopsy report, they never made any comment about his adrenal glands. It's still a mystery, whether he had Addison's disease. They always said in press conferences he had an adrenal insufficiency, but nobody would say the word Addison's disease. Famous picture, I've been here. This is at the Washington Hilton. I've stood right there before. Now what's there now and what's done with presidents today, they built a garage. At this time, this Washington Hilton, some of you may have been there, but they have the biggest conference room in the city, so big meetings are there. We had some hospital meetings there. I saw President Clinton speak there one time. But now there's a garage, so the limousine pulls into the garage, the door is shut. He does not step out into the public. And actually, I saw President Obama about 2 years ago when I was in D.C. He was doing a fundraiser at a hotel across the street. And so we were just a few blocks from the White House, but the entourage comes. It's about 12 vehicles for him to travel. They call it the Beast now. The presidential limousine is called the Beast. If you ever look at it, it looks almost like a tank. But they always have two of them, so you never know who's in. But what they did at the hotel, about 10 minutes before they came, they set up a big white tent, like a garden tent, unzipped it, and when he came, those two cars drove into the tent, and they zipped it closed, and you never saw him get out. After he went in, we took the tent down, opened the street back up, waited. He was up there for a couple hours, put it back up, and never saw him get out. So they don't let people get out anymore. This man here, Tim McCarthy, he's a University of Illinois graduate, played football there. He took a shot in the abdomen for President Reagan, probably saved his life. Later ran for Attorney General of Illinois, did not get elected. Mr. Brady, his press secretary, was shot in the head, as you might remember. And there was a lot of things went on later about the Brady bill, that his wife tried to get more handguns off the street. This police officer was also shot. And of course, President Reagan was shot right there. This Secret Service agent wrote a book about this event, and some people accredited him to saving President Reagan's life. When he was shot, he shoved President Reagan into the limousine. I think that's why I shot him. Shoved him in the limousine, and they were going to the White House. That's where it was going to be secure. Go to the White House. As they were helping President Reagan up, he was yelling at him in pain, and he thought that he maybe had broken his rib on the floorboard when he shoved him in. And Reagan coughed up some blood, and he saw it. And the agent said, "Go to Georgetown." And so they headed to the trauma unit to Georgetown. If they would not have done that, he would have died. The bullet was a few millimeters from his pulmonary artery, and if they would have got the pulmonary, he would have died. So several funny stories about him going to the hospital. He said something like, I hope all of you are Republicans, when they were getting ready to put him to sleep and things like that. But he came very, very close to dying. And probably without that agent making that call, if he would have gone to the White House first, he never would have survived. President Reagan also had other issues during his presidency. Colon cancer. Had colonoscopy several times. He had probably had a TIA at one time. And near the end of his presidency, there was truly concern about, is he developing early dementia? And of course, that progressed on. President Reagan turned out to be our oldest living president. He lived to be 93, beating John Adams, who lived to be 91. Also, what would happen during President Reagan's time, when he had his colon surgery, and he also had prostate surgery during that time. For the first time, they invoked the 25th Amendment. The 25th Amendment was passed in 1967, and the major sponsor of it was Birch Bayh. Some of you remember Senator Birch Bayh from Indiana, who was born in Union Hospital, as was his son, Evan Bayh, who I met about a month ago. And anyway, the 25th Amendment makes it very clear what happens if the president's incapacitated. And so George W. Bush became the president when President Reagan had his anesthesia. When he was put to sleep during these surgeries, he took over. So it's a very clear path now how you can succeed the president or if he's incapacitated. And so now if you get put to sleep, some procedure, the vice president officially takes over. I thought I'd change up just a little bit and talk about who are our best athletes. Who are the best athletes among our presidents? And George Washington, he was a beast. 6'2", 200 pounds, camped out, surveying, was a beast. He said to wrestle a horse to the ground. I read a story about him. They said that, of course, people wrote so beautifully back then, but they were talking about there was like a big party or celebration in Mount Vernon. And the fellow that's writing the story is witnessing it all, and he says, "We were in the yard, dressed to the buff," meaning they didn't have their shirts on, glistening with sweat, playing Toss the Iron. It sounds like sort of like they're throwing a shot. Just guys are seeing how you throw. And General Washington walked by and he said, "General, would you like a toss?" And he said, his massive hand grabbed the iron, and as if it defied all the laws of gravity, he threw it farther, much farther than anyone. And as he walked away, he smiled and said, "If anyone comes close, call me back." So he was a real, would have been a great, probably a great outside linebacker in today's time. This is a picture of the Army football team I was mentioning also. Dwight Eisenhower, that's why he went to West Point. He wasn't to become a soldier. He didn't really know much about that. He went to play football, which he did. His sophomore year, he didn't play at that time of freshman football, was just getting started. It was Army, Navy, Notre Dame, just a few schools, University of Chicago, and so forth. But his sophomore year, he was a leading ground gainer for the team. They're starting halfback, and at the last game of the season, he blew his knee out. Probably an MCL, probably a major, he couldn't play anymore. Well, he was offered the opportunity to get out of West Point because of his knee. You have to remember, it was all cavalry back then. It was foot soldiers. Okay, if you couldn't walk or run, you had no business being in the Army. He rehabbed his knee and decided, "I'll stay in." So I guess history kind of changed, that he stayed and didn't drop out of West Point. History would have probably been differently, but he rehabbed his knee and stayed in, and of course had his military career. President Kennedy swam at Harvard, got a letter in swimming. Of course, they always lived on the ocean, whether it's up in the East Coast or down in Florida. So he was a good swimmer, obviously, and probably saved his life during PC-109 incidents. Jimmy Carter jogged his whole life, was on the cross-country team at the Naval Academy. He was really one of our smartest presidents. He was very high in the Naval Academy, I think like 70th in his class out of over 500, and really one of our first nuclear engineers, served on the first nuclear submarine that the U.S. had. But he ran all through. My dad and I went to the 1980 Democrat Convention. My dad was a delegate in New York, my first time in New York. And we stayed in the same hotel that President Carter, Vice President Mondale, and Tip O'Neill stayed, 1, 2, 3 in our succession of presidents. Just tell you a quick story. I'd never been to New York, and went for Marshall. We were in Manhattan. The convention was at Madison Square Garden. So my dad and I are in the room, and I'm kind of looking out the window. And I look out, we're on the 11th or 12th floor, and there's like a service area, kind of behind the hospital, or the hotel, and there's like 5 guys on the roof, total SWAT outfits. I mean, guns, the whole thing. I told my dad, "There's something going on down." So I go down the elevator, kind of wander around the lobby, trying to figure out where these people are. And pretty soon I walk back in this hallway, and there's nobody there but 2 Secret Service agents. You can spot those guys. And they had a little rope set up, and I'm standing. I said, "Can I stand here?" And they said, "Yes." And I'm kind of getting the idea that I'm probably right under this rope. So I'm standing here, and all of a sudden the elevator opens up. Jimmy Carter, Lillian, or Miss Lillian, his mom, his wife, all the kids come off the elevator. And me. And I shook all their hands, and that was it. They walked out the door. I walked out right behind them, and they were gone. But I got to shake all their hands. About 2 days later, people appeared on the roof again. I said, "That's not going to be Like I said, I'm by myself. Nobody else. You see this? There's a little rope set up, and I stand here. Yes. The door opens up. Ted Kennedy and Joan. Ted was running for president against Jimmy Carter, if you remember. She was dazzling. Shook hands with him. Shook hands with her. They go walking out the door, and so I'm kind of following. I'm just a few steps behind him. And so the limousine's there. And Joan gets in the limousine. Ted starts getting in the limousine, and people are yelling at him on the street. Hey, Ted! He steps on the running board and stands out, and I'm just 10 feet behind him. That Secret Service agent just jumped on his back right behind him and just pushed him in. It was like we did not want him out there like that, and just boom, they shoved it right in the car. And I was okay, but Jimmy was. The point is, he was jogging in Central Park with one or two agents at that time. Life was a lot simpler. President Reagan was quite an athlete. Some of you know he was very famous for being a lifeguard. Supposedly saved many, many people as a lifeguard in a small town. And then the Knute Rockne story, he played the Gipper in that story and so forth like that. But Reagan was quite a horseman, obviously, also. Always kept in shape, was in good condition. President Bush Sr. was the captain of the baseball team at Yale. He was quite an athlete also. They stayed fit their whole life. His son obviously was a jet pilot. You have to be in great condition for that. Got into different kind of things. Here, mountain biking became very popular for him. Had a couple injuries during that time, but he was always in good shape. He was a runner and so forth also. Barack Obama, of course, played high school basketball. I don't know if anybody ever looked at him for college. I don't know if he was that good or not. But of course, he went to Columbia. And I don't know if they have a basketball team. They probably do. But I don't know if he was the only black guy on the team or not. I don't know. We didn't get the whole picture. I have to show you this picture. This is those of you who are old enough to know Saturday Night Live. Remember when Gerald Ford stumbled on a rainy step and coming down and was made fun of by Chevy Chase. And Chevy Chase, his whole comedy career was about falling down. But in reality, Gerald Ford was a first-team All-American in Michigan. And so in my mind, he was the best athlete we ever had as president, even though he was perceived as being, clumsy and kind of awkward. I'll finish with one more little caveat, something different. Nobel Peace Prizes. 4 presidents have won Nobel Peace Prizes, and I'm lucky enough to have seen 2. As I mentioned, Woodrow Wilson had one in his house. It's about this big. The other one was, I'll just tell you quickly, my nephew who grew up in Terre Haute became a golf pro. And J.T. Crawford, my late sister's son. Anyway, his first job out of college was down in Houston at a big country club. Turned out to be President Bush's country club, President Bush Sr. He started dating a lady, Quincy, and they got married, who was Barbara Bush's personal assistant. So Quincy traveled all over the world with Barbara Bush. So when they had their wedding, they went out at their house. So for those who know the history of the Turner family and what side of the aisle we come on, it was a comedy skit. The Turners at Kennebunkport, okay? So we all went to the wedding. There's pictures out there of it and so forth like that. But George and Barbara and Jeb were there and spent the whole day on their compound. And then she worked for Barbara Bush. Then when W was elected, Laura Bush asked her to come to work for her. Quincy became this director of scheduling for the First Lady, so she worked in the White House. She was actually in the White House on 9/11. Anyway, we had a hospital meeting out in D.C., so JT said, we'll see if we can get you in the Oval Office. So I said, okay. Now, at that time, before 9/11, we just sent our driver's license out. That's all we had to do. So it was a Saturday afternoon, about 4 o'clock. So Quincy comes and meets us at the White House gate and gets us in. What's good about the day was President Bush was in Camp David, which is always better if he's not there. Anyway, as we're kind of outside on the compound there, the grounds, the word comes to her that President Bush is coming back early. So, you know how you see sometimes the president getting off Marine One and people are standing around, they kind of wave at him? That was us, okay? So when he landed, we got to stand there and watch him get off the helicopter. We all kind of waved to him and so forth. So anyway, the word came out, if he stays in the residence, they're going to let us go in the West Wing. He stayed in the residence. So we waited about 20 minutes outside. They got the word he's not coming over. So Quincy took us in. Of course, she worked there. It was 4 guys from the hospital and me, 2 uniformed Secret Service, and Quincy, and that was it, and JT. That's all that was there. The place was Saturday afternoon. So we went to the Oval Office. They had a little rope set up. You could take 2 or 3 steps in, but you could He used the same desk that President Kennedy did, which is kind of famous for the picture of John Jr. crawling out from underneath the desk. But all the original artwork that you see. And then across the hallway is the Roosevelt room. Teddy's picture on one wall, FDR's on the other. All the military battle streamers along the wall. You see it on TV pretty commonly. A big mantle fireplace, which you see press conferences sometimes. And there was Teddy Roosevelt's Nobel Peace Prize. He helped negotiate a Franco-Prussian war that was kind of clumsy about 1919, and he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for that. So we got to see his, it was sitting on the mantle at that time. And then we went to the cabinet room. There was nobody there but us. Same thing, had a little rope set up. And if you see it on TV sometime, actually the president's chair is about this much higher than everybody else's. And they have nameplates on the, who sits where. So we got to spend some time there too. Probably spend an hour. And like I said, I told the president of the hospital, I said, well, Frank, I said, if the Russians decide to launch, we're going to be the first to go. Teddy Roosevelt, also Woodrow Wilson received the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts in trying to get the League of Nations started. And then, of course, Jimmy Carter in 2002 received the Nobel Peace Prize for his work that the Carter Center has done for humanitarian things around the world. The Carter Center has done amazing things in underdeveloped world, particularly on different diseases he's helped eradicate. And of course, Vice President Al Gore won the Nobel Peace Prize for his work on climate change. Just a little caveat about him. Some of you remember Glenn Pichard, was a great friend of ours and our congressman. We went to a fundraiser for Glenn in Springfield, with the Vice President Al Gore was there. And I knew he had written a book called Earth in the Balance. And he wrote it when he was a senator. It's kind of that early book about climate change. This is like 1980, he wrote the book. So I knew that he'd written it, so I went to Used Bookstore and found it. So when we got to meet the Vice President, people were lining up and so forth. So I had the book with me, and I said, Mr. Vice President, would you mind signing your book? And he says, you know, you're the only person besides my mother who bought that book. I said, well, sir, I actually read it. So he signed it for me, which is kind of unique now because that book was the nidus of climate change, went on to help get him the Nobel Peace Prize, and he's still doing those things too and so forth. So that book's probably worth something now. But matter of fact, I don't think I brought it here, but there's some other books there. I think that's about all. The hour is up, but I think that's about all I have to say.